let it go to 10 in case the tape wrinkles. You look gorgeous. Okay, anytime. I'm going to sit down so I'm not going to wait.
Good afternoon, Bal. It's such a pleasure for us here at the George Washington University to have you visiting with us here today. And I'm very, very excited to have you tell us a little bit about Thamel.com, a little bit about your business model, and what it is that you do in your unique marketing for the Nepalese diaspora.
Well, thank you, Hildy. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and it's always a good experience. So I take it as a very as a learning experience that every time I get a chance to come out like this and then share my story. So interestingly enough, so what we have is a e-commerce portal, actually. E-commerce portal, but all the products and services that are listed on our site, Thamel.com, caters to more than 2 million diaspora Nepalese that are living all over the world right now. So this is a portal where people can send money, or they could buy specific products for their friends and families that are living back in Nepal. And on top of that, what we do is we take a digital picture of the recipient receiving the gift, thus confirming the delivery.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started with this particular business model, sort of a little bit on the evolution and where you've arrived today in terms of the products and services that you're delivering through your site?
Sure. Actually, it's been a very interesting journey so far. And the way we got into this is when dot-coms were flying high here in America. And I happened to be back in Nepal, and we wanted to kind of do something similar to what was happening here and kind of just explore the internet. So we established Nepal's first, just the information portal. And so it was a portal where we had, that was supported by various businesses that were listing on our site. And then these guys would pay a monthly fee or annual fee, and that's how we would sustain. Excuse me. But interestingly enough, even after launch, after like more than even a year, we saw very few transactions. And one thing we had done right in the process is we had created a chat platform called Yak Chat, and where people would come and just that's a place where people would come and have a virtual chat. Excuse me. And so one of our approach in establishing that chat room was so that people in Nepal would be able to talk with the potential clients that are abroad. But interestingly enough, the demographics of people that were using the chat platform were different. When we did some stats on it, we realized that it was mostly Nepalese diaspora talking with their friends and families back in Nepal, and this is long before Messenger or any other existing chat platforms that you have today was popular within the community. So when you have more than 300,000 unique users that was using our platform, we thought, what can we do with this traffic? So we came up with this idea saying, okay, here's diaspora, maybe we could come up with some products that they could send to their friends and families back in Nepal.
Terrific. And what were some of the initial products that you began with?
So far, the whole process of development of our company has been completely organic. So it's test and fail, and just. So in the first phase, we came with very basic products. There were just 3 main products: cakes, flowers, and CD. And CD was obviously because of the Amazon.com, and cakes, I think it was for birthday, and obviously the flower was also just kind of see if people would send that for birthday. And that was just the 3 main products that we had started off with.
Okay. And what were sort of some of the early hiccups that you encountered?
I mean, the reason I do that is basically when we first came up with this idea, then people thought we were crazy. So we're not cake producers, we don't grow flowers, and obviously we don't make CDs. So basically we went after the Nepal's top vendors in these product areas and told them, here's what we're going to do. And it's like, looking, what? So you're going to create a portal in a country where basically there's no infrastructure, and then somebody living abroad would be able to buy that and send it here? I mean, they didn't even want to listen to us. They thought we were completely crazy. And that was one issue. And the other issue was, hey, if I have my products online, my competition is going to see it. and then basically they're going to copy it, and there goes our competitive edge, and we're not comfortable for people having access, taking a look at our products. So these were the main two hiccups. I mean, like, and outside of all the technology problems that we've had, I mean, like, for example, do we have a virtual payment systems to accept credit card online? No. And then basically, even the development of the whole entire application itself, who would develop? How would it develop? So these were all the different scenarios that we had to consider.
Sure. So you were developing this business model basically in parallel to a similar development that was happening in the industry in the United States with all of the background infrastructure and whatnot that was available. Were you able to leverage any sort of off-the-shelf kinds of applications to help you, or were you really quite involved in a lot of the technological development as well to be able to facilitate your needs in the Nepalese market?
Unfortunately, we were not in the financial position to take a leverage off the off-the-shelf applications, and they were just very expensive when we explored the idea. And at the same time, our first approach was, we contacted some diaspora over here who were engineers working in software firms, and then, excuse me, we had initiated the development of a few applications, and it was basically, there was a disconnect. So finally, because I really wanted to do this, and I knew there was an opportunity in this, so I said, heck with it, I'm going to go back to Nepal, find some developers, and have it developed in Nepal. So what the platform that we have developed is 120%, homegrown. I mean, like, now it's grown into a very sophisticated platform where we can handle more than 1,000 deliveries a day, and it's been a very continuous process, and at the same time, great learning experience, because the thing is, the application that we have developed now can work when, basically in a limited infrastructure. And at the same time, it sits on top of local supply chain than us having to fit into whatever application that was available to us.
Terrific. Well, we'll talk a little bit about your supply chain in just a second with the model. And perhaps one way that we could approach that is, I understand that you've got some experience with goats. And I suspect that our audience would be very interested in hearing something about the Thamel.com goat link.
Yeah, actually, it's the famous goats, actually. So what happened was, so when we had first started the company, and even after the launch of 3 products that I had mentioned earlier, we were hoping for transactions, and that did not happen. So we were basically on the verge of kind of scrapping the whole entire doing internet thing in Nepal. So around that time, it was around October, November, and because we are, basically we're based on a lunar calendar, so based on this, I guess various different reasons, so it never happens the same day, but it was around that time of the year that we have a biggest festival known as Dashain. So it's a festival that is, the whole process of the festival is like they sacrifice goats, hoping for prosperity, and people save throughout the year. They take even loans, high interest loan, just to be able to finance this, the holy purchase, I guess, basically. So it's just a very there's a long-standing history and a basic myth on sacrificing goat that day. So that is goat is basically the main item of the festival, like turkey is here in the Thanksgiving. So,
Sure.
So we came up with this idea saying, okay, here's the situation. We're about to sink our ship, and this was around the corner. I said, let's come up with this idea now. Let's start, we're going to go down anyways, but if we go down, let's go down with this style, at least make some names. So we came up with an idea where we would market these goats up online, people residing abroad being able to pay through it, payment verified, message sent to Nepal saying, okay, here's a goat for family, so-and-so person in Kathmandu or in Pokhara, wherever, and then basically we would go out, and basically what we would do is that we would have the people come up to a goat bazaar, pick their own goat, take a digital picture, and send it back to the center. And it just was such an instant hit. It took us 3 days, 3-4 days to get a transaction going, and suddenly, the next thing we know is BBC calling us for an interview, and that's when everything started.
Super. So on that first foray into goats, what kind of volume were you working on?
Well, that season, we didn't have much time, so I think probably in 7 to 10 days we sold more than $30,000 worth of goats.
Wow. That's a lot of goats.
That is definitely a lot of goats.
It must have been a prosperous year that year in Nepal.
Actually, it was. It was. We were glad. I mean, it just gave us a very good understanding of what works.
Yes.
You know? Since I'm being educated in the States, and so I wanted to kind of analyze and see, okay, what really worked? I mean, there's probably a process here in place that we had never thought of.
Yeah.
So what was the process that was in place, help in place? So one thing that we learned from it was we were basically building business that had to be culturally correct.
Talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
In this case, what realized was, so we had these people who were, most of the people who are living abroad, not by choice, but not by individual choice, but for various circumstances. I mean, like not by force, but by various individual circumstances, and and basically, when you're part of a Nepalese culture, if you're the eldest son in the family or something, that culturally you're expected to participate, to provide in certain ways. And especially in the goat case, usually the provider of the house is responsible for providing that. I mean, in a country where the per capita income around that time was probably $200, $219 a year, a price of a goat that was around $80 a pop is quite a considerable amount. On the other hand, $80 for a guy who's working in New York, it's not much of a amount. So basically, it was a system where we were tapping into a diaspora. We had financial resources and to provide that. And on the other hand, he had a cultural need. One, to provide for the family, and at the same time, to be able to participate in a festival by providing that. So that's basically it was. So it was just like thinking, okay, here's the content needs to be localized. A localized content needs to fit within a certain culture. I mean, like Nepal being, extremely, it's a very diverse society. So now it's a competitive edge that we understand this very well too, but at the same time, it's very complicated. I mean, like for example, last time there was a celebration of, it was a Father's Day celebration, and what happened was, in a Father's Day celebration, we delivered boiled eggs. I mean, now the thing is, we had 2 eggs, because in my culture, 2 eggs is auspicious. But then we ended up eggs in one guy's culture, which was not auspicious. So we get into interesting situation, but it's a challenge, and we're looking into it. So.
Terrific. Oh, that's wonderful. I know that with the previous example of the goats, using the goat bazaar is another example, I suspect, of your attempts for being culturally consistent with regard to standard consumer behavior in the Nepalese market.
I mean, exactly. I mean, especially when .com came and all the web band came, or all these great e-commerce companies that drowned hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think one of the reasons that I think they sank was they wanted to reinvent the supply chain that has lasted for hundreds of years. And in fact, we're almost in the process of doing the same thing. So we thought, okay, all right, people are going to buy goats. How are we going to deliver? I mean, are you going to go out and go to everybody's house and knock on the door and say, hey, here's a goat? And there's a lot of problems with that. The thing is, maybe somebody paid for the he goat. We end up delivering the she goat. Who's going to be responsible for it? Somebody paid for $100 a goat. Maybe they think that we're delivering $80 goat. So these were all the considerations that we had to put in place. Then we went back and realized and saying, hey, basically, what is the process? What is the existing process? What is the cultural process? What is the cultural supply chain? And then when we did our research, then we found out people normally go to bazaar. It's a family thing. They have to go on Saturday. They want to go, embrace, lift, and buy it. So we thought, what? That's much easier. We're not delivering. So so that was the kind of learning lesson that we had.
Terrific.
Received.
What other challenges do you face with your at-home delivery model? I know with the goats you don't do the at-home, but the cakes and the flowers and many of the other things, you've adopted a model where you do this at-home delivery. Can you walk us through how that works? You receive an order for a cake for someone's birthday or in honor of an anniversary or something. Where does it go from there?
Well, what happens is, first of all, we've got a very sophisticated information management system. So I mean, like especially the software. The software is developed in such a way so that it is integrated from the top to the bottom, and we are tracking each and every process. So order comes, order is batched, and in some cases, just to be able to manage the operations. So what happens? People, our vendors who supply these products, who are equipped. If they have an email. If they have a fax. If they have a phone. If they don't even have a phone, then somebody literally goes to this place and places an order. The order comes to our warehouse, and then from warehouse, then it goes in a delivery. I mean, it's just amazing that how we have been able to do it. Even I get surprised, to be honest with you, is how we have been able to manage this logistics. For example, we live in a country where there are no numbered addresses. So, and at the same time, Kathmandu, it's 8 to 12 kilometers diameters, and we got more than 2.3 million people living in a crummy city. I mean, and at the same time, streets with no houses. I mean, like streets with just jam-packed with houses, no addresses. So how do we, I mean, so we had to develop, on one side, we had to develop a system, a sophisticated, computerized system to be able to manage this. I mean, and that's, we had to basically create our own maps. And the map systems that we have created is a whole story of its own. Just to give you an example, so what we do now is like, if somebody places an order in terms of identifying a location, so we've got multiple, formal or informal, whatever the famous place is famous for, a landmark that they will need to choose. So as soon as they choose a landmark, it creates a number in the back end. So when you produce report for delivery, then it's sorted accordingly, and that's where we go.
Super. So in fact, you've had to basically create your own institutional backdrop and your commercial infrastructure and physical infrastructure to be able to make some of this work, right?
Exactly.
I know that Thamel.com is also involved in the handling of financial remittances, not in terms of the purchase of products or services, but in actual money transfer. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that piece of the business has evolved and any kinds of complementarities you see between that and your product division.
So basically, in the process of delivering whatever we did, the goat or the flowers or the cakes, we built a significant amount of trust. I mean, so we wanted to leverage that trust and then basically, add the other, and just basically add the other add-ons. And remittance was obviously, we launched our platform in a time where, 9/11 had just happened. And at the same time, the Hawala system, the informal system, was dying up. And at the same time, there was a serious need to send money to Nepal, especially through US. And it just clicked. It just really clicked. It was challenging and very expensive for us to do it from the start. But finally, we were able to do it in joint partnership with local banks, which supported us immensely because they saw the value that we were creating. They saw the brand image we were building. They saw the whole entire system that we were developing. They just wanted to be part of it, and that's how it all started.
Terrific. So through this remittance services, you've actually been able to promote the advancement of many of the local financial institutions as well.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
If you had to sort of put a label on it, what would be the value proposition for Thamel.com?
I think the main value proposition that we provide is, we are bridging sentiments. We're really bridging sentiments. We're not in the business of moving money. We're not in the business of selling cakes. We're not in the business of selling flowers, but we are in the business of connecting sentiments. So when you're a diaspora, I mean, especially I've done a lot of demographic research on my customers, and my customers are not the guy who's making $80,000 to $100,000 in Silicon Valley, a Nepali professional. My guy is not a scientist working for some big companies over here. My customers are people who have either migrated here, through DV lottery, or for basic students that came and was not successful at doing schools or whatever, but mostly people who are working in the blue collar area. And these are people that are just working day and night, and then are not treated very well within the society. So these are my customers. So I understand their needs very well because I've had a chance to go out and talk to them and see what kind of living conditions that these guys have and what kind of isolation, psychological isolations that these guys live in. So us being able to understand, okay, here you're in a society where really nobody's taking care of you. Then we come in the picture. So we've got, you dial us through voice over IP line, we'll talk to you, whatever you want to say, and we'll help you connect with your friends and families back home. There are so many people that have bought computers because they get to see the digital pictures that's sent from Nepal. There are so many people, there are a group of women that have spent probably more than 8 hours just trying to figure out how to send stuff through our site because it helps them connect. So we're in all, so we're in the basically business of connecting sentiments than anything else.
Terrific. Who do you consider your most important, either current or potential competitors?
The reason I'm smiling is every other month there's a site that opens up just like mine in Nepal. And the good thing about it is they're all sustainable, so they're all getting a piece of the pie. And obviously we have a major share of the market. And for the reason it has been our baby in Nepal, and then basically, and people still buy from us. And there's just interesting competition that has come up. And there's sites called muncha.com, there's sites called netfornepal.com, and I mean, I can't even count anymore. I mean, they're all basically, in some cases, they have our image, and maybe price is like $1 or a cent less than us, but that's okay. You know, it's the customer benefits, because now they're all getting all sophisticated. We are the one who introduced voice over IP in Nepal, saying, okay, here's somebody in Australia could dial a local Australian number, the phone rings in Nepal for customer service. Now I see my competition doing that. So it's creating an economy of its own on a very grassroots level. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. So
that's super. Can you talk a little bit about the vendors that you're working with within Nepal, and sort of some of the challenges that you've had, and some of the ways that you all have worked with these vendors to ensure that they're able to provide you with the goods and services that are required for you to be able to maintain the important brand image that you've created?
It's definitely been a lot of challenge, actually. Especially, so what happens is we are in a very cyclical business. The remittance business is constant, and especially only during some festival it goes up and high. But we're not really part of the supply chain, so we're good. But especially on the other product side, so it's a cyclical business, especially in certain seasons, certain festivals, the sales just go crazy. And good thing is, there's a joke in Nepal saying we have 365 days in a year, but we have 366 days of festival.
Good for your business model.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So basically, when we up in this upstream, so there are some vendors we have just grown out of capacity. Like one of the famous hotels out of Nepal, Yakaneri. I mean, it's very famous all over the world, actually, that hotel. And there was an instance where they just didn't have enough infrastructure to keep on producing the cakes. I mean, finally the guys who were working in the bakery said, we're done, we can't do it anymore. So then we had to go in and convince them that they would get overtime pay, they would get other benefits, and blah, blah, blah. And then now they have a system in place where they can happen. Okay. And then on the other hand is like basically the quality. It's like when we first started, it's like doing businesses in Nepal is my way or the highway. Now they're realizing, hey, I've got a competition. I got to start focusing on having a solid product development aspect in place. Like returning stuff. You would never ever hear somebody buying a product and going back to a store and say, you know what, I want to return it. That was the norm before, but now, no, because we make them say, hey, if somebody's buying a TV, or if somebody's buying a $1,000 worth of washing machine, which is an interesting, it's very interesting that people buy a lot of washing machine on our site, is like, they have access to returning it. And then again, following with the customer service values, like, hey, I want it fixed on this day. That means this day, not in the next year, not the next month or the next, So these are all the kind of interesting business values that are being transplanted in an extremely traditional business environment.
Yeah, lots of development of those vendors and suppliers required.
Definitely,
sure.
Definitely.
Have you found that you've been able to sort of establish a stable of partnering firms or vendors that you're able to sort of rely on and build on now, or is there sort of constant turnover given the requirements that you have? I know that in working with the diaspora community, I suspect that there's a lot of word-of-mouth traffic, and you have to be very careful about missteps that you might have in service quality or whatnot. Do you find that that translates into a lot of churning or turnover in your vendors? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. Actually, see, interesting thing about being part of this diaspora business is capacity development. How is the capacity that is developed mostly in the developing world in this case? Because most of the diaspora obviously are moving from the developed country to a developed nation where basically they have access to a better environment. So they're used to seeing things happen in these developed areas. And the thing is, they expect the same level of service when they're dealing with us.
Sure.
So that was the first understanding that I personally had to transplant to my people in Nepal. And then they had to go out and basically share that with the vendors. Now it's gotten a lot easier than before. I mean, in one case last time, what happened was somebody in procurement at a very famous, another bakery called Shangri-La, they made a big mess up by buying bad pineapples.
Oh dear.
It was Father's Day, and we had sold tons and tons of the product, and there was a lot of cases where people got sick.
Oof.
So this was a case where this hotel took the initiative to do whatever they needed to do. pay for medications or whatever. And these are the things that would not happen before. But now, because of the business that we have been able to provide, we can kind of direct, okay, here's the process and here's how we want it. Can you deliver or not?
Sure.
If you deliver, you're part of our network. If not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, terrific. Good. Well, I know that you've been so successful in Nepal and that you've been actively involved in thinking about ways of doing some international expansion. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the birth of ThamelInternational.com, or Thamel International rather, and what kinds of activities you're envisioning for that line of your work.
Well, actually, it's been interesting for me, like for example, getting all this interest in our company, especially social scientists, academicians, NGOs, and obviously now the business people too. And we've looked into franchising it first. And we did all the work that we could and see if that was a good model to take, and it wasn't. Because the thing is, dealing with diaspora is so sensitive and it's so culturally driven. I mean, like for example, even in Nepal's case, I'm from a social class called Newaris. There is a different hierarchy of communication that needs to be in place, or different, just basically it's dealing with that particular ethnic group is completely different than from somebody else. So it's a very sensitive area to work in. So when we realized that, saying, okay, maybe this is not, when we realized that, it was not a good idea for us to go out and expand and franchise it. However, what I have seen and realized from my work is, we might be different, the different diaspora, but at the same time, the process of our thinking or some of the importance or the communal systems that we have is not much very different. So just understanding that, we thought instead of being able to franchise, we thought, by consulting and helping them facilitate through the process, it's not an easy business. You have to have technology, you have to have infrastructure, or whatever, process in place to be able to do this. So we've now focused on mostly providing these solutions than us owning a piece of it. And personally, I enjoy that too. It's good to see that, it's good to see that it's people taking initiative in the local levels. Sure. And somebody just throwing from top down.
Yes. Have you been able to point to any examples of where your consulting clients have introduced problems or challenges that they're encountering that have then fed back into what Thamel.com is doing in Nepal?
It's interesting. So we wanted to actually, first when we established this consulting firm, we thought of an idea of replicating the similar model in other countries. But instead of that, what we have seen now is interest from various stakeholders, primarily banks, saying they want to have a piece of, like they have to have an understanding of piece of model. Recently, I was in Mongolia working for a Haas Bank, extremely successful microfinance institution actually. And so they wanted to get an understanding of how the remittance platform worked and how our localization of the content worked. So that piece. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that we have seen so far. And now there are some entrepreneurs who are doing ground research in Mexico, and who would possibly be working with us. But in the same case, what kind of other supply chains would develop through that, because it's a larger market and so forth. We have working on that.
Super. Well, Thamel.com and certainly your consulting work through Thamel International is probably the poster child for looking at using a diaspora for economic development in the homeland, and for thinking about leveraging business transactions to promote base of the pyramid kinds of interactions. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what your lessons have been from Thamel.com for not only your firm's success, but also for broader economic development.
I come from a very traditional business family. My family has been in business for, 700, 800 years, so, and most of the business experience that I got, the informal was through my grandfather and my father. And one thing they taught me was, in Nepal, there's a famous saying called "tel ke hernu, tel ko dhara hernu," which means basically, you don't just look at the source of the oil. You just don't look at the oil, but you like the source of the oil. In other simpler terms, follow the money. Especially when you're dealing with base of the pyramid, like if you do an economic assessment. I mean, in most of the countries, you're seeing, remittance being Philippines more than 10% of the GDP, in Nepal more than 20% of the GDP. So there's significant funds that are basically coming from this diaspora, and they are coming for a various purchase. So how do you as a company, let's say a multinational, how do you position yourself so that you have piece of that, and at the same time creating a value proposition for it? Like for example, let's say, Microsoft MSN Messenger. I mean, like if they were to do an evaluation of how many millions of people, how many, especially the diaspora, are using the platform. But now, if you look at our model, where whoever is paying for the product is not actually the owner of the product. These just finance, for example, Skype. Like on Microsoft Messenger or Skype, if somebody were to load money for them to call to the States, there's a value proposition for all the people. It's a piece of action that Microsoft hasn't had yet. The guy who's calling from Nepal is calling for cheap, and the guy who's calling from here is also calling for cheap. So there's money saved, but it's just the concept of whoever is paying for it is not necessarily owning it, but how do you create a value? How do you create a business with that, with that concept? So basically understanding, there's a diaspora, you've got money, here are needs. So how do you connect those? And these are needs are turning into products. In our case, we sell tons of computers. These computers these are clones, and mostly these are clones that we sell for probably $700, $900. But when somebody wants to buy a computer from America or London or from Australia, they just don't want to buy anything else. They want to buy something branded. They want Intel inside. How do you leverage, how do you create new market opportunities leveraging on the brand that the diaspora have access to it? So it's a whole different market, I mean, that's yet to open up, So, and I think that is basically, that would be a very unique, unique, marketing that you could probably see it happening in these countries.
Terrific. Have there been any opportunities for you to work closely with the Nepalese government in terms of trying to think about replicating some of the success that you've had with your business model and helping them either through training or through export promotion or other kinds of activities that they might be involved in?
Actually, we have been working very closely with the government, and they have been fascinating. In fact, it's like, there's no policies in place yet, but they have been basically saying, okay, you guys test it out, you be part of the, consortium where you consult and then, and do things. And unfortunately, this is not the right time in Nepal right now because of the political turmoil that was happening. Otherwise, we were brought in as a consultant to work with various NGOs, and various NGOs and local stakeholders and kind of play a facilitator role, And because we understand, what we are is we understand business, we understand marketing, we understand delivery. And so basically how do we, and most of all understanding technology is basically how do we, connect all these. But right now we have not been able to do so because it's just not the right time for Nepal right now. We're just going through unfortunate events right now.
Sure. Well, I wonder, you are a very inspirational entrepreneur, and we're thrilled to have the opportunity to hear your insights and to hear more about your business. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your own background and life experiences that brought you to this place.
Well, I think it's a very, it's a great question, and I'm very comfortable answering this question. The reason is, I am a product of globalization. I went to good school in Nepal. I had teachers from Oxford and Cambridge University, so a lot of the British values. Then my family sent me to Lewis and Clark College, a liberal arts school college in Portland, Oregon. So, and coming from a privileged family, you always, and being in Nepal from a very poor country, and then, you always have this interest to give something back. And at the same time, so that is an expectation that a family has and the country demands. On the other hand, you are also a transnational individual. You're not necessarily 100% Nepali, or you're not 100% American. And I have spent a significant amount of time here in the States. So being a global citizen, how do you make a position in the world? How do you basically identify yourself in the world? So basically, that was the kind of mode that I had personally taken. So it was very important for me to fit within, these norms versus just going out and getting a 9-to-5 job. And I did try it. It just didn't work. Basically, so being a Nepali, and being basically, I travel to Nepal, like every other month, and because there are various roles that I need to play as a Nepali that I need to be able to do at home. So it had to fit my lifestyle.
Sure.
So I was always looking for, an idea. I said, okay, what is an idea that would bring me up and down, but at the same time, it's something new and cool. So
Yes.
that's exactly how I approach this.
That's terrific. So you studied at Lewis and Clark. You studied liberal arts. What got you into business, other than the sort of that's the family business?
I mean, basically, you know, I mean, I remember just playing with the calculator as soon, I mean, like, you know, since I was a little kid. And at the same time, you know, like.
And you worked in industry, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
In the industry here in the States for a very brief period of time. It did not go well. But at the same, you know, it's just, like I said, you know, when you're from a privileged family in a poor country, there's a lot of social pressure about, and at the same time, this inspiration that you get, you know, being able to be having the, you know, best educations in the world, and to have it's an inspiration that you get just seeing people that you could really change people's lives. I mean, in Nepal, I mean, like, I think, like, I was recently in Nepal, and usually what happens is when we have this, we go through this cyclical seasonal sales 2 months out of the year, if you compile it, various weeks, days, or months. So we had a lot of temporary staff. And as I was stressing earlier, the Nepalese political situation is not that great right now. And when I was there last time in Nepal, and then we had to hire 175 people that would work and then ride on bikes and go out in delivery. And I was, one of the perks that they get is they get to eat, you know, in a fancy restaurant, or they get a DA for working for us. So there's a lot of perks. So I was just sitting in a chair, and there's a guy, and then there's a certain list of menu that these guys could eat, and there's one menu that they could pick. So this guy comes up and say, you know, I just had, he said he had some dish called momo. And then the thing is, he came up to me, looked at my face, and said, can I also have chow mein? And I just, like, basically shrunk down to the floor. The thing is, these kids don't even have means of supplying themselves with a decent food, because, and these are all qualified kids. These are all educated kids. Because the country is in such a shambles, there's no opportunity. So for me to see that, and it always becomes an interesting, it always inspires me to say, okay, what can I contribute? What can I continue to do? And see if there's something we can bring into the country. So
that's super. Well, all of your employees are in Nepal, correct?
Yeah, everybody's in Nepal.
Other than yourself. Okay, you're sort of
So
bridging
I'm
the back and
yeah.
forth. I wonder, you know, with such an abundance of eager, capable folks to work with you in Nepal, what sort of things are you looking for? Because it's a vast pool of talent, and at the end of the day, you've got to find the right people to be able to deliver your service. What are you looking for in the folks that you're hiring?
So I think, well, like, as I briefly mentioned earlier, we're not in the business of selling cakes, but we're in the business of selling sentiments. They have to, MBA degrees from good school will not impress me. You know, they have to understand people. They have to understand people's need. Business transaction is just a result of it. But if you can't understand my need, I mean, they have, like 15% of my company is owned by staff.
Okay.
So there's a lot of benefit to be part of our, you know, basically incentive to be part of our organization. So the thing is, you have to understand what we're selling, what's the value proposition that we're selling. Are you really, I mean, the thing is, the role we play is very sensitive. People think that when we go out and deliver stuff, they think that we are basically, their son or daughter has come to Nepal and so basically, and deliver. So basically, that's the thing we're looking for. And it's been interesting. So it's a very sensitive business too, because you're dealing with a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes on. But if that's what we have to deal with, that's what we have to deal with.
So you're looking for the same kind of passion that you have, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Terrific. I wonder what advice you can offer to young students or graduate students even who are either very, very interested in doing international work and or very, very interested in doing work relating to economic development. What sort of kernels of wisdom might you throw their way based on your experience and based on your own organization's experiences in the different markets that you've been in?
Let me see. Well,
we're not looking for trade secrets here.
No. I think the suggestion that I would give, I mean, I would look at it, I mean, like in two different ways, you know. Basically, philosophically, first of all, why are you getting involved? That's very important. Can you deal with certain, you know, can you deal with different, you know, as you briefly mentioned earlier, you're traveling for 5 weeks, can you deal with that?
Yeah.
philosophically, are you mentally and physically prepared to do that? So that's very important. But on the other hand, but just basically the thing is, again, can you relate with these people? Yeah, I mean the numbers and the stats and the demographic analysis and all the, the typical mumbo jumbo of a business school. That's important. But beyond that, can you understand why people buy products? Why people buy products? What kind of need that they're really fitting? I mean, especially in the international environment, where it's a whole different new ball game.
Yeah.
Can you basically relate with these people? And I think just basically having patience to understand the culture and not having stereotype, especially when you're dealing in a international business environment. Those are probably the comments I would briefly make.
Good advice. So you're a young man, and you've had a lot of success early in life. What can we expect from K.Joshi over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Well, my family thinks I'm crazy, so I don't know. So I like starting new stuff. I like doing new stuff, and so it just, it's Nepal is my home. It needs, if a guy like me can introduce basic technologies on a grassroots level like we have, and so then I'm sure, as a result of my engagement in Nepal, there are a lot of people who have been inspired and been doing similar things, and that's great. So that is what I see. I'm just being kind of trying just new things and see how it influences, not only economically but also socially, but within a global environment.
Pushing the edges, great.
All right.
Well, I know that Nepal is very fortunate to have you heralding from that wonderful country, and we've been very fortunate to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
We look forward to future discussions, and we look forward to watching your continued success with Thamel.
Thank you.
Thank you.